Okay, you guys can unmute. We are ready to rock and roll. We are live. We are cruising. We have a full chat already. Everybody is here and hyped. Welcome to our guests. Hello, everyone. I think everything's working.
Hello.
Everything's working. Hello and welcome. How we
Hello, thank
doing?
you.
We are doing good. We're excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
I am so excited to have you guys here. I'm going to turn that down just a smidgen. Should have done an audio test. That's the only thing I didn't do. But we good. We good. We're good. Turn that down just a drop so that we have more even sound. Okay. Hello. Welcome. Today is our interview day. We made it. We're all here. We did the thing. And we have some introductions. These are our wonderful, wonderful guests from Sanctum House here with us today. We have Ms. Erica and Mr. Bennett. Welcome on in, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, can you please introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about what you each do at Sanctum House?
Sure. So my name's Erica Watkins, and I am the supervising case manager at Sanctum House. So I work directly with the women that we service every day in helping them to create plans, set and achieve goals within the program. I also have had the privilege of being with Sanctum House before we have ever taken in a resident. And I was able to help develop the program by which the women work through while they're a part of Sanctum House. So I'm really excited to be here.
Amazing.
And I'm Bennett Alvaro. I actually joined Sanctum House pretty recently in the last year as the marketing manager. So I'm helping Sanctum House to spread their awareness, around our mission to provide sanctuary for human trafficking survivors, and also to help support our fundraising efforts by setting up campaigns, by working with the local community, and by helping to bolster our partnerships and explore new ways to support Sanctum House and the residents that Sanctum House supports.
So whenever I said I got an email from Charity Guy, it was this one. I got
Guilty.
from Charity Guy. Bennett is Charity Guy.
Yes. That means give me the money, please. It would be very helpful.
Oh my goodness. Alrighty.
But
so
no, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you guys for coming. I'm just excited. Keep my throat clear here.
Mm-hmm.
I see it in chat. We've got link to your website if anyone wants to go check out the Sanctum House website, and on the YouTube video, I'll have all the links in the description as well, so that everybody can just pop on over there, check you guys out. We also have a Tiltify link today if anyone in chat would like to donate to Sanctum House. We do have that available as well. And we are going to dive on into our interview. We've got a lovely little pile of questions, which I need to pull back up because, you know, as you do. Alrighty, to kick us off, tell us a bit about Sanctum House. What do you guys do? What is it all? Oh dear, if I leave that, then it gets angry. Okay, I'm gonna leave that there. I haven't done this on stream before with the capture, the way it's capturing, so it's like, OBS is like, what did you just do? I'm like, nothing, I did nothing.
Just Control Z.
Alt F4. Alrighty. I was gonna say, Val, don't mock me. Chat's laughing at me. Alrighty. We're good. As we were.
Yes.
Tell us about Sanctum House. What exactly do you guys do?
Sure. So Sanctum House is an in-residence 18 to 24 month shelter program for women who are survivors of human trafficking. So ultimately, we provide housing. They live there. They're able to get access to mental health care, physical health care, dental care, vision, a plethora of life skills. There's educational support. and then support to try to help them to kind of decide the direction they want their lives to go in the future. And then we offer the supports and the resources for them to be able to live independently when they finish the program.
Fabulous. Amazing. I think it's going to yell at me every time I tab. So I might have to rewrite out a couple of my questions here. Alrighty. Wanted to dive into what does it look like for a day at Sanctum House? What do the day-to-day operations look like? Because like we get this big picture of, okay, it's a shelter, you guys do everything, but what does everything look like? It's kind of hard to sum up everything, but in an extremely holistic approach, that literally means everything.
True. So from the day-to-day operations, ultimately, in the mornings, we do a morning meeting in the house where the women kind of touch bases. They go over their schedules for the day. Generally, there's therapy in the mornings. We do offer individualized trauma-based therapy, and then there are group therapies. So they're doing those throughout the day. There are life skills groups throughout the day that would include healthy relationships, a grief and loss group, a survivor leadership group. So those are also things they would attend throughout the day, as well as various appointments, whether it's for mental health, like I said, physical, dental, eye care. So some of the ladies work, so they may work in the day. A lot of the evening is spent in recovery because a lot of the women there have co-occurring disorders of substance use disorders as well as mental health. So they attend recovery meetings in the evenings, NAAA, smart recovery, things like that in the evening. And so the staff is there throughout the day just to kind of offer support while they're participating in these various things. What's cool about Sanctum House is there is staff there 24 hours a day. So the women always have that support, always have somebody to go to if they need some help with something, or if they're just having a bit of a hard time and need that. So I hope that kind of helps give an idea of the day. And that's normally Monday to Friday. And on the weekends, we try to set up basically just fun things to do, right? In life, you do want to enjoy yourself, have a good time. So the movies, they love bowling, roller skating. So we always try to get out and have some fun and do some fun things on the weekend.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that, Erica.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've noticed about the residents at Sanctum House, the women who live there, is that for each one of them, their day is different every single day. And part of what they're spending their time focused on is learning how to manage that time. A lot of them came from situations where they weren't able to manage their time or their day-to-day tasks, asking to do simple things, asking for their basic own autonomy. And one of the things that takes time, and that's part of the length of the Sanctum House program and other programs that are like it, is that it takes practice to learn to empathize with yourself, to forgive yourself in order to start taking risks, in order to start taking responsibilities, in order to start doing things that a lot of us might take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really important that there's staff and people at Sanctum House present and patient that are there when something needs to be taken care of or when a resident needs help, because a lot of it is about standing back and giving them options and opportunity and being there to assist them when they feel like they might not be able to, or when these habits get in the way. So there's a lot of empathetic work going on where a lot of the staff and the resident advisors who work there spend their time watching and talking and offering that sort of emotional level of support that the residents are actively working through relearning how to do and how to navigate so that they can build their own relationships outside of it. And Erica, I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit about some of the residents who have graduated the program and how their behavior changed over time too, because it's each resident at a different stage is really having a different day-to-day experience, and a lot of that is based on just where they are mentally and physically.
For sure. Yeah, sure. So I absolutely agree with what you said in regards to the support from the staff. And the ladies' journeys are individual, right? Even though the program has structure within that, they're on these individual journeys that, one, we respect, and two, we want to help support. And so some of the ladies that have gone through the program, um, first of all different ages, walks of life, coming into the program, and now are living successfully. But the journey for some is 2 years, for others it's a year. But in general, while they're there, they're plowing through and working through that trauma that they've experienced. They're learning how to rebuild healthy relationships. They're reunifying with family that maybe those relationships were broken. And they're also trying to set themselves up to be independent. So finding work that is going to be able to sustain them, um, having a vehicle or transportation, housing. And so now a lot of those ladies are living successful lives, have reunified with their children, some of them, their family members, are able to have healthy friendships and relationships. One is engaged to get married. Another is getting her master's in theology. Another is a manager in her work and she's killing it. She reunified with her daughter and is really working to rebuild that relationship. So the work happens while they're there. We also continue to support them when they graduate. And it's really awesome to see every step of their journey and be there to support them while they're growing, as you said, Bennett, and kind of making choices and being able to grow and learn to trust us and themselves at the same time so that they can live successfully. And that is definitely happening.
That is amazing. It's a lot of it we don't think about if we've had a fairly normal growing up, to think that, like, when I was 16, I got my driver's license and I got a job right away and I learned how to manage my time fairly well. I might have a smidgen of ADHD that's not helping with that. But it's a basic, it feels like a basic skill that then you don't think about, and then to think about possibly having an existence where you don't have that autonomy, and that, okay, I have to be here at this time, I have to be here, I have to do this, I need to remember to do that. And that's just like the difference between not even having that experience is just like kind of crazy to think about, but also it makes a lot of sense when you think about the situation. But then to think that that's a whole nother section of recovery, it's like, wait, you don't always think about just how much it changes you.
Yeah, every part of their life, they have a different idea of what normal is than what you or I may have. And
Yeah.
you never stop running into the instances in which that becomes clear. And that's what you're watching them work through, is reestablishing these baselines for how interactions should be, how relationships should be, how transactions should be between people, how work environments should be. We think about our boss that's mean to us, and they're thinking about something totally different in those situations. There's a lot of work to think about all of those ways in which you live and all of those ways in which you interact with other people, and they have to relearn so many skills in each of those buckets. And it's doesn't just happen in that year or the year and a half or 2 years. It's things that people are working on for the rest of their lives, and it's trauma is what happens to the person who's been trafficked. Trafficking is the people who are perpetrating the crime. And sometimes we talk about one without talking and acknowledging the other and the lives of the people who are affected for the rest of their life and what they're working through.
Agreed.
Alrighty. Next question. But like, I think a lot of us, back to the trauma thing, most people have experienced some level of trauma, and most people are healing from something, whether that's an abusive family member or whatever they may have gone through in life. And to just wrap your head around how much bigger this is. Like, because to some extent, it's still big. Everyone's trauma is valid. But to wrap my head around a complete lack of autonomy. Because, like, when you're in high school, you don't have a ton of autonomy. And, like, I think about, like, my mom was really picky about where I was going and who I was going with. But that was mostly out of protection and not out of true control. And because I was a kid. But then to think that, like, that other period of, like, 18 to, say, now 25, like, to not have autonomy through there would just be, like, I wouldn't know how to human, which is exactly what where the learning how to human is the extent of all of it. Everything. It's incredible to wrap my head around that level of having to learn how to human. And it creates a lot of empathy of just wanting to be able to help in that capacity.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Tell us a bit about what your volunteers do. I know you touched on that they're there. You do have volunteers that are there 24/7.
Sure. So we have staff actually that are there 24/7. So we have
some are staff, some are volunteer. I know I see a lot of posts about volunteers, but you have the full-time staff as well.
Yes, but our volunteers are kind of like the heartbeat of Sanctum House. There's so many things that they do outside of some of them come to the house just to spend time with the ladies. Some of our volunteers are able through our mentorship program to be mentors. So they develop long, ongoing building rapport and relationships. That's a really intricate part about the women's journey in terms of learning how to have healthy relationships, because often in trafficking, it's a lot of comparison and a lot of jealousy, and the women are pit against each other. But learning how to be able to have a healthy relationship, I think, is super awesome. And our volunteers are able to mentor and do that, offering the ladies rides, which I know may seem minimal, but in transporting them to these appointments, often they're nervous, they're afraid, they're not sure how they're going to go. And the volunteers are able to offer not just support, but share personal experience. Oh, I remember when I felt this way or this or that, which really just helps. And I feel like what it really does is offer normalization, kind of normalizes these things, as you were saying, kind of, Rachel, trying to imagine how to human again. When you're able to have these natural encounters with people that are just there because volunteers are there because they want to be, they want to help, they want to get to know the women, they want to offer what, treasures they have, whether it's a skill. We have a volunteer that does knitting. One of our residents, she loves to knit. She can knit all kind of things, and she comes every week, and they're trying new things and making stuff for Christmas and family members. And she made little ornament holders by knitting. It was really beautiful. So you can share, if you have skills and if they want to share them, if they want to transport to various appointments or to the NA meetings, the recovery meetings, or if they want to mentor. There's always ways at Sanctum House to give back by volunteering. And I would say, even not just as a staff, but for a lot of the mentors that I've worked with, it's reciprocal, right? What they're giving to the ladies are amazing and resilient, and they're giving something back, and that relationship is the beauty, I think, of being able to volunteer and contribute to the women in their lives.
Definitely, because getting completely moved out of everything you've ever known and then having to find just the comfort of people who actually want what's best for you, and to learn how to accept that they actually want what's best for you, and that nobody, and that the working through that there's no hidden agendas, there's no danger behind every door, that people are actually caring about you, to get to that level of friendship, like to take people from a warning sign to a safe place is a lot of it's beautiful. The volunteers are able to jump in and start filling those roles of just random new friends.
It's awesome.
It's beautiful.
And I would say too, the volunteers, they're helping in different volunteers are helping in different ways, which is, I think, one of the people often wonder, how can I help and how can I be involved? And to the point of what the trauma has created, as far as how much each individual resident has to rebuild and how many parts of their lives it touches, when you think about community members and how they can help, it's way more likely that whatever their skill set is, that it can be applied to help Sanctum House in some way. We have groups that we partner with that are volunteers, and their skill set is their outreach groups and organizations that spread the word on our behalf and arrange different collaborations and canvas for events. And then we have individuals who, you know, their direct work or profession is how they give back to the organization. So there are lots of ways in which Sanctum House needs help and can be helped along the way. And it's really about thinking not so much if you're the right person to help, but it's, you know, what is it within your means, and that's going to be helpful in some way. Like, we can definitely find a way to use it to whether it's, you know, just giving you the right information to talk about trafficking and trauma to other people. It's really there's an issue around under-awareness and not knowing how to track what's going on in human trafficking and how many victims there are. And so one of the best things we can do is really just start talking about it more openly, start paying attention to the conversations that discuss human trafficking locally and in your community, because it's not some sort of crime that exists in one spot or another spot, but it's a crime that exists to some degree in most places. And so it's not really like a crime of circumstance in some other country. It's a crime of vulnerability and the person who is in a vulnerable position to be taken advantage of. And it's very broad in how it's defined. And really what the common thread is the trauma that happens to the person and the things that are taken from them. And our job at Sanctum House is to help them either rebuild those things, find those things again, or learn how to, you know, hold them and move on with their lives. And a lot of that is, you know, stuff that any person can contribute to, because you're contributing, you know, whatever you can at the moment in whatever capacity you have. And, you know, the residents we have and the women who have gone through the program will tell you that that's what's, you know, it's not any one thing. It's a lot of little and big things that help.
All of the things.
All of the things.
And like you said, we don't tend to think about human trafficking as something that's here and something that is like in our communities as well, because I think a lot of times human trafficking is seen as just the posters in the bathrooms at the rest stops where you've got the little number tags, call if you need help, and like you see that and that like just feels alien from your understanding of like, but what does that mean? What does that look like? What even, like, why is that here? Even some people could be on the side of, oh, that doesn't happen around here, this is a good community. Exactly. And it's like, not really. This is something that just bleeds into every community, every state, county. It can happen anywhere, and it will happen everywhere.
Yeah, there's not one type of perpetrator. There are people and situations that end up taking advantage of people, and they use force, fraud, and coercion.
and that's how trafficking is broadly defined in the United States, but it's not sufficient to really understand how many situations that description can be applied to. You know, somebody who's working in a restaurant and who has their wages withheld because they have a mental handicap and they're, you know, slightly related, whether a cousin or something, to people who own the place. That's a common way for people to be trafficked. People don't think about the fact that people can be trafficked while they're living in their homes. They can be trafficked while they are out on a vacation. Like, it's not simply being smuggled across state or national lines. It's about force, fraud, and coercion, and it's about people who are vulnerable to other people who will use those methods to take advantage of them. And you know, the examples, it's hard to even come up with enough examples, but if you ask each person who's survived trafficking, they have a very different story. And the people who've trafficked them are sometimes distant people, and sometimes, more often than not, they're people that they know and that they knew well, or in some way through an acquaintance beforehand. It's a way more common sort of exploitation than you might think.
Yeah, definitely. Because any time where it's like, oh, well, even a situation where you are technically volunteering or someone's paying for something, for it can get real confusing and real sketchy real quick with like, oh, well, if I do this, they're paying for that, so technically. But if it's not like an actual, these are my hours, I get paid, anything that gets onto the other side of that, it could easily turn into something where you're in a situation that you did not intend to end up in. Very easily.
You don't have a way out.
And then the whole, well, you owe us, could easily slide in there, and just anything could spiral into something that's, anyone could get stuck in something like that.
Yeah. And that's what leads into the pattern of abuse that then you experience as a victim of trafficking. And that's why people kind of don't think about it as a situation that you're in for a period of time. They think about it often as a thing that happens at one moment, and it's quite the opposite. It's, you know, it's sustained trauma over time, the experience of being trafficked.
Agreed.
Yes. I think next thing to move into is, what do you guys consider some of the most important parts of the work that are being done? Like, what is your personal, which part do you feel is like the most important to you that gets done here?
No, that's a great question. Ultimately, I guess I would say the most important, for me at least, I can say it would probably be watching the ladies regain their own voice, and finding who they are, making choices for themselves, trusting themselves. I would say is probably what has been most important to me. Being able to provide the space where it's safe, being able to provide the support that is needed for them to get to that place is probably the most important part of the work. I mean, they're doing the work, so I want to make sure that Sanctum House, we do not take any credit. We are here to support them and provide the resources and the safe space for them to be able to do the work, but they are doing it. And watching them heal and finding their voice and becoming the women that they remember that they once were or always wanted to be is probably the most important part.
Erica, I could not agree more about watching the residents go through their process, and as I've gotten to get closer to them as well, just noticing how quickly their mind can change and how quickly anyone's mind can change. And I've gotten to grow a lot more humble around them and around how they can be so self-reflective at times and so open and honest. But I must disagree with you, Erica, when you say that you don't want to take credit, because you're at the house every day and you're working with these residents in so many different ways, and you're using so many different types of energy to do that, that it wouldn't be fair to not give you and Shannon and Karen and Mary Ellen, and I can't keep naming people, but the people who are at that house every day, those people who are there 24/7, not people like me who are out on their computer just typing things on the internet, but they're the ones who are expending themselves. Erica goes on these weekend trips with the residents for their leisure time and takes her leisure time and cuts it off short with her family in order to show these survivors of trafficking what it is like to have family, to have those experiences. And that's a lot more than credit can go to show that it's deserved. But to answer the question about the work that's being done, I think one of the things that Sanctum House has been able to do is really listen to the residents and really understand and collect information that can help to draw the through lines in their experience. Sanctum House, collects information and data that isn't collected on human trafficking victims, detailed level data. And the way that we're going to understand what it's like in our local communities is by really talking to the survivors and giving them the time and the space to share those experiences. And then we can identify what are the push factors that lead to their vulnerability, that enter them into a trafficking situation. Where are the hot spots in a local community that trafficking is more prevalent? And we can actually collaborate better with law enforcement agencies to target those places, but then also to change how we look at the people who are current victims of trafficking. Like, so often the women that we have at Sanctum House have stories about run-ins with law enforcement where they are mistaken as the crime perpetrator when they're in a traffic situation and forced to do certain things, because otherwise they won't have a warm place to sleep at night, or otherwise they won't get the drugs that they've been addicted to. So you really start to hear the details of their stories, and using that information, we're able to really understand and inform better how we need to handle these people, because they need to be treated with empathy when we see them in their trafficking situations out in the world, not just when they get to Sanctum House. Mm-hmm. And by having those stories and by being able to talk about them, other people can start to see the world differently and to see their surroundings differently and start to treat the people around them differently. So hopefully that when we start getting more residents coming to Sanctum House in the future, that we can just see over time that their trafficking experiences have hopefully started to get better and they've started to get more and more seen, and that we can see that expressed through our data. So, it's not just about the work that's being done with each individual person, but it's about what they're all able to collaboratively build together that can help make it better for other people who are out there. Because that's the biggest issue, is we have so few of the victims who are in places like Sanctum House, who are being cared for and who are being seen. And they know all those people who are still out there in those trafficking situations. And by being able to bring their stories to the fore, we can actually see what this looks like, and we can actually address it, and we can have community members who are engaged locally to think about what trafficking might look like in their area and how they can help prevent it or stop it in their area. And not just look at it as some crime over there or some big thing that doesn't have to do with them. Sorry.
Definitely. Definitely. Brain caught on a thing and then forgot it. But yeah, to get everyone involved in the sense of taking the whole situation in empathy, because we've gone from our whole war on drugs and everything, that anyone who touches drugs is a bad person, to understanding significantly more about addiction and everything else in that realm. definitely a culture change that's been happening. Very, very gradual. It's getting there, I think, a little bit. Definitely not quite as bad as it was, at least from what I understand. But definitely still stigma, and definitely still a lot of when it comes to seeing situations like that, and like that falls into law enforcement also not having the same level of like, this person is clearly in distress, instead of, there's not always that automatic assume that you don't assume that they need help. Is, it seems we're still getting to the point where assuming that someone in that kind of a situation needs help instead of needs, we're still throwing drug addicts in jail. Like
and re-traumatizing people, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
You're traumatized.
We're continuing the trauma by not being open to it.
Yeah, and that they need help. Not, it doesn't, that it's a whole culture thing that needs to continue to shift.
Precisely.
That we, I don't know if it was that we all got ingrained that drugs are bad, and so anyone who touches drugs is bad, and we just like added those two together or whatnot, but that is absolutely not true, and needs to be dismantled. That whole entire stigma needs to be dismantled so that we see people who need help instead of someone doing something wrong.
Yeah, in regards to that, Rachel, recently, 2018, I believe the law was passed that included drugs as a form of coercion, because coercion is a very sly way that traffickers can manipulate their victims. And they were kind of able to skate around it without substances or drugs being included. Because what is happening often, and for a lot of the women that we've worked with at Sanctum House, is the drugs were used as a form of coercion. Well, if you want this, you have to do that. Oh, you owe me for this, so now you have to do that. And there was this constant, basically, debt that they could never pay, that the substances were being used. And because of their addiction, they were stuck in this cycle that ultimately they felt they would never get out of. And many of them were only able to get out, unfortunately, due to things like overdose, where they were hospitalized and then had an opportunity to get out of that situation. So you're right that it's moving slowly, but the cool thing is it's starting to happen. That change and that law really opened up things for human trafficking victims, because they were really starting to see that correlation of how drugs were being used to manipulate people, and specifically the vulnerable people that have been exploited by way of human trafficking.
That's good steps in the right direction then. We're
taking steps.
Gonna get there someday.
We will.
The next couple questions tie into, I saw we had some from chat asking about how you guys identify how do the women end up at Sanctum House?
The
intake process, yes. Tell us a bit about the intake process, how they reach out for help, or do they get found? How does that process break down?
Sure. So Sanctum House works with a large variety of partners. So we partner with a lot of substance recovery programs. So we do get residents by way of that. We partner with the judicial and jail system. So there will be times where women are being arraigned for prostitution or for having drugs, and they'll contact and say, we think this is a trafficking situation. Can you guys offer support? We work with trafficking task force. We work with also mental health departments, because often there's a co-occurring with substance use and mental health, or sometimes just mental health. So if someone is having a mental health episode and then identifies some type of a trafficking situation, they'll contact us. We do have women that contact us directly just by calling or going on our website. We are on the National Human Trafficking Hotline, so we do get calls by way of that. Sanctum House does service women from all over the country. So if there's someone that has had a trafficking experience that our program can help and support, we will help facilitate getting them there so that they can get the services that we offer. And I'm trying to think of any other creative avenues. We have built a lot of relationships in the ED departments. Often they're kind of those frontline people that are coming in contact with victims for various, as you can imagine, for various reasons in the emergency department. And so we have built relationships, especially with the social workers and the nurses there. So they will also reach out in the event that they have someone that needs support. We work with Common Ground in our local area, which is Oakland County's kind of like community mental health hub. So we work with them as well. So there's lots of ways that the women come. And there's lots of organizations that are doing things around the US that unfortunately just don't have housing. So that's another way. They'll say, hey, we've been working with her. She is really trying to get out of the situation. We think it would be better if she could come to an in-residence program. And can she come to your program? So that's another way also that we have residents that come into Sanctum House and start the journey on healing and having the lives they want for themselves.
If you notice from Erica's answer, it is not something that is prescribed how the United States deals with what they identify as human trafficking survivors. They do not, there's no plan for where to send people who come from these situations. And other countries have examples of what to do. But the issue is every single country has been going about it in completely an independent way for many, many years. And while that's recently been changing and states are looking to fund more readily their local programs, it's still in that early phase where, like, even to find the people to help, Sanctum House has to actively work to find the victims to help because so often they're dismissed by people in other areas that don't know what's going on and what they're doing. So it becomes a sort of like sorry, my printer is going crazy. It's like a ghost is in here. But though there's a there needs to be a way to identify people who are trafficking victims and have a clear method to match them with a program, with a residential program that can actually service their specific needs, because you can't just a lot of these the women that have come through Sanctum House have been to other places and other programs, and they've been to rehab facilities, and they've been to prison, and they've been, you know, in the different tools that we currently use to treat the problem. They've all experienced those different tools. And there's no way right now, besides organizations like Sanctum House working together to identify these people and to pull them out of the judicial system when they can work and make those relationships. But none of them are set up to do it on their own. They're unless Sanctum House was in touch with the state of Michigan, a lot of victims would just be brushed right over, and, you know, a judge would have no idea what to do with them. So it's a like there being awareness of Sanctum House and there being more programs like Sanctum House will enable us to actually streamline this process and to make a concerted effort to really make sure that people are matched with the right programs, because you know, that's an issue Sanctum House has as well with the intake process is you know, residents that come to Sanctum House, not every single resident, not every single survivor who comes in is going to have the ability to finish the program, to fit in with the community at Sanctum House, and to be successful in that environment. So by having more options and more people who are aware, we can ensure that we can provide spaces for people to succeed in their recovery. Sanctum House has, you know, their specific procedures and staffing and the current residents that are already there. And, you know, you're working on relationships. 2 bad people in a room together can create tons of bad situations. So it's not so easy to just have the right resident in the right program and to ensure that they're going to be successful in that program.
Everybody is different and everybody's situation is different. And some people just click with other people and some people just don't like other people, and that's just how it is.
It
Yeah,
is.
whether you're traumatized or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our goal, I think, is just to always make sure that they're at least that they are able to get what they need. So, like Bennett said, if it's not working at Sanctum House, we will offer, other supports. But our goal ultimately, even when we get calls from people, even if we can't service them, our goal is to always make sure that we're at least offering that resource and that support. Because often if that person is taking that step to reach out, that's their shot. And we want to make sure that if they're going to take that kind of make themselves a little vulnerable in that way, we'll at least try to make sure we can get them to the next step. So that's definitely something that we also do in the intake process if they can't necessarily intake into our program.
Yeah, it's not streamlined. It's not put to the program. We don't have a government program to deal with this. We don't have. It's all, yeah. Recap of what you were saying about how the intake is very varied because there is no set way. Like, we think about people getting out of human trafficking and we think of like police raids and we think of them calling from the number or something, but it's more than that. There's every possible way that they could get out, but as you said, they're taking oftentimes if they're reaching out, it's taking a lot of effort and a lot of emotional effort, a lot of bravery just to say, I think I need help, and to try to pull yourself out of that. It's good that at least something gets done. If they manage to reach out, something will get done in their favor somehow, even though there's not a full setup of, it's just small organizations trying to do their best instead of, and tie all the strings together and not lose anybody in the cracks. And that's a lot, and that's gotta be an insane process. And that's amazing that there's people willing to put in that kind of effort to help other people.
You look at it this way, though, it ripples out. So, even if Sanctum House can't help every person who comes through the Michigan State and gets identified as a trafficking victim, by having the relationship, now as Michigan State is going through these victims and they're going through the judicial system, they're aware that they're there. So now there's a whole group of people that they're treating systematically differently just because they know that they had that relationship with Sanctum House and they've helped one or two people that Sanctum House had the capacity for, right? So now you have just a different view from the prosecutor's office towards a whole demographic of people who are committing certain crimes or are caught up in the judicial system for certain reasons. And that ramification, it means that they get to go to a rehab center if that's what's available. It means that they get different sentencing. It means that they get different access to different facilities and services and mental health cares. And so even that awareness to those other organizations and to those partners, that causes a change in their behavior and a change in how they see people. And that's the first thing that has to be done is to get people to identify those situations and identify that they shouldn't do what they instinctively want to do to that person or with that person.
Yeah.
Great.
Like the ties in with the whole, we used to be super hard. Anyone who touches a drug is a bad person, but that is absolutely not true. And it's so much more complicated than that. And that's amazing that even to the judicial level that it's getting, the shift is happening and that they're being identified as someone who needs help instead of someone who needs, but here you go, here's your sentence, go sit in jail for a while. Like, no, they need a rehab center, please. They need help. They don't need to be in trouble. And then
trafficking victims will feel safer going to police to help them when they see them, because right now they don't, because they get thrown in jail for whatever the police identifies them doing at that moment, rather than saying like, hey, like, it's actually fortunate there's a cop here because I can tell you what's happening to me and you'll actually help me.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get me away from that person. And that's what we need the behavior to be between victims of human trafficking and the law, and people who are store owners and people who are walking around on the street.
Yeah, to shift the energy to be, you are safe coming with this. You are safe to come out and say, help me.
Mhm.
And that the actual shift is happening at the law enforcement and judicial level, and that they will actually get empathy from the powers that be, that they are going to get help instead of, told off for not doing the right things. Like, you did all the right things. It's your situation that got out of control. Someone else took control. It's not that you chose that kind of a situation.
Yeah. But even people without authority, like Erica, you were talking about nurses and people in the ER, they often run into trafficking victims all the time for broken bones, for
Yes.
overdoses, for random stuff, all sorts of things. And they often draw conclusions about people and dismiss them too. And training those nurses, that relationship has led to a total shift. And you can see there's a shift in the healthcare community across the country and internationally in identifying trafficking and identifying these sorts of things. And that's a pure example of being able to shift a whole community of people, a whole set of professions to think and identify something in a new way, and to then, start learning new habits and new behaviors around how they handle those situations.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. To be able to to have the nurses being able to pick up on things more easily, to be able to identify, like, even just like speech patterns, like the way they talk about something. If they're going to be like, kind of like, oh, I can't answer that question, like, you don't just go whatever. You're like, hold up.
Like, oh, what do you mean you
like,
don't have an ID?
What do you mean?
Like, you're 35.
Like, what do you mean? Like, dive into it just a little bit.
Exactly.
Have a way to identify and be like, I'm concerned, to be able to put a little check mark somewhere and say, we need to look into this, than to just having them all aware and able to pick up on the things that they would need to be aware of to be able to help as effectively as possible.
Sure. And I think what also in regards to what you all are saying is, I think what's really been helpful in that and in building those relationships for Sanctum House is that, it's one thing if you're in the ER department and you say, oh, this seems kind of fishy. Okay, you ask more questions. Yeah, this is trafficking. For so long, okay, it's trafficking. Now what? Right? What do we do? I'm sorry. How can I help you further? There wasn't really a next step. And so
they just wouldn't call the cops. Like,
yeah,
that was
it was basically like, well, we won't call the police. Do you want to go to a domestic violence shelter? Do you have a family member we could call to help you? There wasn't that next step. And so I think once people are starting to get the word that there is a place you can call, right? There is somewhere that they can go, then you feel a little bit, you feel more empowered to start making those identifications because there's something you can do about it. It probably feels really bad to like know something's going on for somebody, but don't feel like really there's anything that you can do. But I think the more that we've been working with all types of partners to explain there is something, Sanctum House is a place where they can come and we'll come pick them up. I think knowing that there's that next step has really started to empower those people who are kind of on the front lines encountering victims to do something and to say something, because they feel like I can really help. I do know a place I can call. There is something that I can do. And so I think that empowerment is starting, and that word is starting to spread, and that is starting to help make that difference too.
Very much. Exactly. That, to think of being like, oh, this person obviously needs help, but I got nothing, is just like gotta be exhausting and draining and very disheartening. But to not have any answers, not have any solutions, like, how bad is this? Do we call the police? Do we, like, how do we, what is this person in extreme physical danger? Well, they're in the ER, so probably. Like, probably. Like, but what, yeah, to have the actual avenues of this, we're gonna build a path for what you see this, you have a next step. That's amazing to be getting past that as a as a country as a whole. And yeah, with everybody doing it differently, then that's creating a whole nother set of how-tos. And well, this country does this and these people are doing this, and what's actually working, what's most effective. Like,
even if you look at the definitions of human trafficking, every country will define it differently. And it is not a one-sentence definition. It's a several-sentence definition with paragraphs to explain the different parts of the definitions. And no one agrees on it. And some countries include some things and some countries don't include some things. It's really not the kind of crime where you can describe it from what the perpetrator is doing. It needs to be described from what the victim is experiencing in order to be able to understand the commonality that's carried between them. And it'll look different depending on where you're from. Like your own culture, your own cultural norms will affect what trafficking looks like in your community. And you can't just say that human trafficking looks the same in all these different places. It just doesn't work. And it's one of the, getting past that misconception and starting to see the victim and the victimization as the definition of what it is to be trafficked. That'll help a lot for people to properly identify the situations.
Great.
Alrighty. Moving into the next part. These questions are a bit more for Erica. Tell us, since you are the one who is hands-on in the house all the time, tell us about your ladies. Do you have any, what do you want to tell us about them? Obviously, we're staying anonymous and everything, but tell us, give us a rundown. Tell us what it's like. Who are they? How has this changed them, and what are they like personally working towards? If there's any personal goals that stood out to you, anything
sure.
like that.
Okay. So first of all, I guess what I would probably say is that the ladies at Sanctum House range from ages right now, currently, I'm speaking of age 23 to 61. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the breadth of human trafficking. Various races, various ages, various backgrounds. They're all, of course, working through their trauma, different goals, yet one communal mindset, which is to heal and to grow. The ladies support one another, but also are learning how to kind of take care of themselves, which is, I think, something that kind of in a trafficking situation gets taken away from them. But ultimately, the ladies have come from all over the United States, as I mentioned. So we don't just have residents from Michigan. We do have residents from other states. And they're resilient, and they're strong, and they're funny, and they're learning to use their voice, and some of them are not afraid to use it, and are reuniting with family. That's one of the major things that I think has been going on. I'm not sure if it has a lot to do with the current pandemic that we're in, but just family members wanting to try to reach out and reconnect and trying to rebuild those relationships. And that's really been happening successfully, especially now since we're using a lot of these virtual platforms. So if the resident isn't from Michigan, we're connecting with people from out of state, which is really cool. Where have they come from? All walks of life. And so we've had residents that were lawyers, residents that were nurses, residents that own daycares, moms, they're all essentially someone's daughters, residents that were in college. It kind of varies in regards to where they've come from. But one commonality, and I know that Bennett had mentioned this, it would just be vulnerability. Ultimately, just finding themselves in some type of a vulnerable situation for whatever reason and ending up in a trafficking circumstance where they were exploited, and now at Sanctum House working through. But the one, if I had to say who are they, I would say they're resilient. That'd be the one word that I would use.
Beautiful. That's amazing. And what are like some of the, are there any common, well, you said healing is the common goal. Are there any like other fun, like more fun goals that you've heard them talk about?
Yeah. Well, one of the ladies recently, she was never able to choose her hairstyles, what she wore. So she has been dialing herself up every day. It is the cutest thing. I'm talking about her hair's different every day. Her makeup's different every day. So we kind of have a joke like, who are we going to see today? But it's so empowering for her. You can tell she feels really good about it and the choices. And getting to do that and being an adult and not feeling like you said, she had the autonomy. That's really kind of a cool goal. And she's really been knocking that goal out of the park. One of our residents did not know how to cook at all. And she had never done it. And she's worked towards now making a full meal. She's got a recipe. She picked out the food items and was able to actually cook the entire meal. So that was really pretty cool. One of our ladies wanted to get a vehicle and she was able to save her money. And with the support of Sanctum House and a partnership we have, she was able to get a vehicle. One of our ladies wanted to go to get her master's degree. And so Sanctum House was kind of able to support her in doing that. And now she's successfully knocking that out the park. I'm trying to think of anything else kind of fun.
One of the residents that got into artwork.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Why don't you tell about that?
Yeah, so she essentially used art therapeutically. Her childhood was very traumatic. And so part of her therapeutic process was to go back to the simple things we used to do, which was color, and kind of work through that. And from coloring, she just developed she has a really good eye for like putting the colors together. And she started to do from child coloring books. She moved through her therapeutic process to adult coloring books. And, they're very intricate. And through that process, she started to offer her artwork through Sanctum House and our partners. And she has developed into an artist. Now she's drawing and sketching her own pictures. When at first she was just coloring them in adult coloring books. Now she's drawing her own and really finding her voice. And she said that she never knew she could be an artist, but it's the beautiful things that she's doing, are breathtaking. So she went from using it therapeutically to literally children's coloring books to now she's designing and sketching her own art and selling it. And it's one of the ways in which she's making money so that she can be independent.
That is amazing.
It's very cool.
Finding your talents that you never got to explore and figuring out what you actually really enjoy and what you're good at. That's amazing.
Yes, and we have another resident I have to share for her because also something similar I think is kind of cool. She got a plant, a volunteer actually. A volunteer, he's laughing because the story goes on. But a volunteer gave her a little tiny spider plant. And
just one plant.
Just one. And it grew and it grew. She was really taking care of this thing. And from that, she really enjoyed like the plant growing with her, if that makes sense. So she bought another plant. And that plant grew with her and another plant. And now there's a joke at Sanctum House that she's going to need to move out of her room and give it to her plants because she has all of these beautiful botanical plants growing, and she is actually coming up on completing of the program. And I was talking to her about her plan, and she said, we were making some goals, and she said, I want to use, botany, this type of plant growing therapeutically for other people, because it was so therapeutic for her. So she's looking at maybe trying to have a therapeutic greenhouse where people can come and kind of learn planting and have plants to grow with them through whatever traumatic experience or whatever healing they need, to kind of offer that back. And I thought that was really kind of cool, that it really started with this one little tiny spider plant, and now she's almost moved out because there's plants everywhere. And she takes such good care of them. And I think it's also, it's kind of poetic in that it kind of shows her growth. They've grown with her. She's taking care of them the way she's taking care of herself. And they're blooming and they're blossoming just like she is.
That's beautiful. I think I'm one of the only people that has managed to have one plant and just work on keeping that one plant alive. Because like my sisters are the same. My sister got one little plant and now she has a small army of succulents.
Yes.
So...
She's so sweet. My coworker had managed to cut her finger the other day, and in having a cooking class with the ladies, and she's like, "Let me get my aloe plant. Let me get my aloe plant." She runs and gets the aloe and clips it and puts the aloe on her finger. It was just the cutest thing. She's got all kind of stuff growing in there, but most of all, I think, she's grown.
Mm-hmm. That is very poetic. I love it. Okay. Moving, I think I have one more question from chat, and then we can move to the final section. We've been going for just over an hour. Look at us go. Beautiful.
Hey.
Go team.
Wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Just flowing. Just glorious. Okay, let me scroll back. As for someone trying to support and to be like emotional support, how we were talking about the volunteers who would be able to have those conversations with them, just like on the drives and whatnot. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to understand? If say survivors talking about their experience, how's a good way to help support them in that, and make them feel comfortable sharing and connect with them on that?
Great question. My suggestion, just based off of, as Bennett mentioned, we're always talking to the ladies about what they need and kind of things we can do to support them. And one of the things that resonates with me all the time is sometimes they just want someone to listen and kind of validate what they're saying. No judgment, just to listen. And that goes a really long way. So that would be the first suggestion I would make, is just to listen kind of with an open heart and an open mind. And it helps sometimes to also be able to be honest and true in your communication. So if, let's say, the resident were to bring up something and maybe it resonated with you, to be able to say, hey, I felt that way before, or, I know someone that felt that way too, to just kind of make, build rapport. So it doesn't also make them feel isolated and alone, in that experience. That helps sometimes as well. But ultimately, I think the best thing we can always do, especially for people who haven't felt like their voice has been heard in a long time, is to truly listen. And if there's a response that is appropriate, you can respond. But sometimes there isn't anything to be said, but wow, maybe I'm really sorry that happened to you. Or, I remember a similar experience for me when I was a teenager, and I, whatever it may be related to. But those were the things that I would suggest, just in working with the ladies and hearing them express what they need is often just a listening ear.
Wonderful.
I think just to add to that too, when I speak to the residents, I often remind myself, like, I'm not their therapist, I'm not their doctor, I'm not their peer in group therapy. I'm not, the thing that they spend all their day working and thinking about working on themselves. And often when they're talking to somebody, especially somebody who is a volunteer and who they're not with every day, they're really exercising that opportunity to share and be heard. And so they're not looking for you to answer any open question that they have, or to fix any sort of way that they feel, or even necessarily for advice. Like if they ask you for advice, they'll ask you for advice. But for the most part, they're really just practicing sharing in a way that they probably haven't been able to. And part of sharing is sharing with more people and being okay with sharing. And often as a volunteer in that position, you're really just another person who's listening to their story. You're not active in their story. So remembering that, and remembering that in the moment, the important thing is to accept what they're saying to you and to take what they're saying to you, not to feel any pressure to do something with what they're saying to you. Like they have those outlets. That's Sanctum House structures those. And as a volunteer, as that lay person interacting with them, you can really just be that that empathetic source that they can practice with, and that they can share with, and that they can feel safe and comfortable with, and that they can feel like you're not going to have some reaction to whatever they decide to share with you.
Yeah. And what's funny, I'm sorry, Rachel, I apologize, but I just want to say what's funny when you said the word reaction is sometimes they may even say things on purpose to see if you'll react. It's like the wow factor. And you sit there and you kind of pull it together, just listening, because they will try to wow you sometimes just to see, are you going to judge them? Is there a bias? They'll test you out as well.
Yeah, and just being able to, I think a lot of people do tend to react to things rather than just listen. And so to be able to just let them practice opening up and not being afraid of you being like, really? Oh my gosh. Like, are you serious? And like, yeah, giving them a space where you'll listen, you'll react as, if it needs an I'm sorry or a do you need a hug. But other than like not a, oh, well, this is now lecturing. You're not going to come at them with a lecture, come at them with a, well, you should have known better, or some, BS that they do not need to hear in this moment. That it's, practicing opening up and having conversations and being able to say, this has been my life. And that they know that they can open themselves up and not be attacked for who they are.
Yep. Non-judgmental, safe space just to be. That's and sometimes it's silence. Yep.
Alrighty. I think we sort of covered the talk about trauma. We may have... I know we touched on it. Did we have anything else we wanted to cover on what do we wish people knew about trauma? What do we wish everyone understood more about outside of like official trafficking, but the trauma survival as well?
Is it okay if I go first? The one thing I would say, okay, in regards to trauma, the one thing I think I would want people to know is that it is treatable, that people can heal from trauma, people can get to the other side and live whole, happy lives. And I think sometimes with trafficking, it seems like it's so much and there's so much trauma and they've been through so many things. Will that ever happen? And I think what is the beauty of being able to be on this journey with the women and see them even after is that it is possible. And so in regards to what I would want people to know about trauma and trafficking, I guess I can put that together and just say that there is healing and there is the opportunity to work through trauma and get to the other side and be whole and happy. And in regards to trafficking, that there's life after that, right? It doesn't end there. That's not the end of their stories. And I think just knowing that, and knowing that there's a support, knowing that there's a place for people to go. Because I remember when I first started to learn about trafficking years ago, and I was so overwhelmed by it, it was almost like I didn't know what to do. And
Mhm.
when I ended up starting to work with Sanctum House, it was such a relief, because then it made me feel like, okay, there is something, there is a place for victims to go and become survivors, right? Because we sometimes use those words interchangeably, but they're a little different. Sometimes the women start out and they feel like victims, and their experience is victimization. But what the journey at Sanctum House allows one to experience is being a victim and then becoming a survivor. And that journey often happens there. And it's beautiful to see. But I guess in regards to trauma and trafficking, that's what I would want people to know, is that don't be overwhelmed by it being so broad. People can heal from the trauma that they've experienced by way of trafficking and have a place to go where they can be safe and come out on the other side whole and heal and live happy lives. And if we work together to spread the word, and if we continue to support places like Sanctum House, and we're going to continue to keep doing the work, it can happen. And it's going to continue to happen for these people.
Yeah, I think this will be my last word, and I just want to say thank you so much for having us here today. This has been an amazing opportunity to share the mission that Sanctum House is so focused on. And what I would say that I wish people think about and understand when it comes to trafficking is that it is really a situation, not an instant crime or instant thing that happens to people. The thing that I think will help people understand trafficking the most is when they change how they look and hear about it, and they really start to ask themselves questions about what a person who is being trafficked is going through, rather than what does somebody who's trafficking somebody look like or seem like to me. And really starting to let that question and let that thought pervade their day to day, so that they can start seeing the hidden crime of trafficking for all the different ways that it makes itself seen and visible on the surface, whether that's drug addiction, prostitution, and sex work, whether that's in some of the arguments between our lawmakers, right? Like just an awareness that human trafficking is, and the experience of being trafficked as a vulnerability is what happens to the people that we're trying to help. But often we talk about trafficking as the crime, and we forget all of the work that needs to be done in order to actually help the people who are affected by it. You know, it's we don't think of other problems in that way, and starting to think about trafficking from the person who's harmed by it, and trying to think about them as any person who could be in that situation, will help to start opening people's eyes as they're walking around to what's going on. And then for trauma, it's to me, it's really being able to tap into what trauma you may have, and to use that as your guide for why you should care and why you should listen, and really understanding that the trauma and what you know about trauma by having it yourself is that it is not something that can be necessarily avoided, and it is something that lasts for a long time. And you can think about how that compound effect might be for somebody living with it. And Rachel, you were talking about this earlier, you know, all those things about being human, really understanding that from your own trauma, you can think about what might need to happen for somebody who has been subject to so much trauma. And you can use that to help inform your decision to help, and to help stop you from thinking that it's some problem elsewhere that you don't have any way to connect to, or to understand, or to contribute to. That you can use your own empathy and your own experience to think about trauma and trafficking as something that you have some ability to help in some capacity, and that you know exactly why you should do it, and you can feel that yourself, and you don't need someone to tell you.
Yeah, I think one thing that I didn't think about when I was going through and deciding about, since I wanted a community charity for my channel and my community, when I picked Sanctum House, I was kind of like, I knew it was going to be the right choice, but I was also a teeny bit apprehensive on how we were going to connect to human trafficking, and I think we found it in the trauma healing, because there's been several people in chat today and in other conversations we've had about Sanctum House, is everyone has some level of trauma, everyone's healing from something, and that's really where the connection is being made with everybody else here, is the healing process. Since that's what everybody, if you don't have trauma, you're weird. That's the
Yeah, it's a certain type of privilege that I think
Yeah.
you're lucky to have if you don't have trauma.
Mhm.
But everybody else who is out in the world knows exactly what we're talking about. So
yeah, and that even for those who haven't been trafficked, that to have this open dialogue about healing
Mhm.
is just going to be beautiful. It is, and it will continue to be able to be a place where people feel open and safe and comfortable talking about these kinds of things, because it's not something that everyone wants to talk about. It's not something that just comes up in conversation if it's not been a subject before. So yeah, I think it's been good. It's been
thank
good.
you so much.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
This
much
has been
for
a pleasure.
being here.
Thank you so
I
much
think
for the time.
I just had one more
Oh, yeah.
question, I think, to like our little wrap up here. What are some goals that Sanctum House has for the upcoming year? What are what are we going to be able to help you guys with? What goals are being aimed for, and how can we come alongside and be in assistance to that?
I'll quickly just rattle off our list of what we need, what we're constantly looking for. The first is obviously raising awareness. So continuing to talk about Sanctum House, to follow us on our social channels, follow us, head to our website, join our newsletter, connect with other organizations in your local areas. There are tons and tons of organizations working in this space. But education and awareness are the first things that are necessary, and learn about trafficking, learn about the experience. And then also just donations. Like we mentioned earlier, this is not a state-funded, like all hands on deck sort of situation. So a lot of the systems that are being put in place are put in place by nonprofit organizations that rely on benefactors and donors. And 70% of our total donor base are individuals who are contributing. So we really do rely on community awareness and community networks and individual contributors. And beyond that, it's really about taking what you've heard today and applying that to your community where you are. We are very much in the Michigan area, and as Erica said, we service residents who come from all across the United States. But this is a local community issue, and wherever you are from, there are going to be institutions and organizations that are doing the thing that we're doing and trying to help the people that we're trying to help in your local communities, and looking for those organizations, seeing how you can contribute and how you can help on a day-to-day basis and make it a part of your lived experience. That's what's going to help the most.
Yeah, I would first jump in and also say, Rachel, I just want to say how much I appreciate you using your platform to create a safe space for people. I just think that's awesome. Because I think the more little sacred safe spaces that are created, the more that people can heal and become more aware. And so I just want you to know I really appreciate that. I think you're awesome.
You're awesome. No, you.
No, you. No, you. You're awesome.
And in regards to what you all can do, Bennett definitely said it all mainly, but I would like to say that I know that Sanctum House, we're looking to be able to do more, and we're looking to be able to house more people, not just women. Right now we can only house women, but we have the opportunity for more property to be able to house lots of other populations of people, and be able to offer the same type of support. And so I know with our capital campaign for the property would really help with that. We're really looking to try to do that next year because we're continuing to be at capacity and we want to be able to do more. So that would be really awesome. And so I know that's definitely one of our goals. And another way to help, like Bennett mentioned, is also with volunteering. And I know the lady asked some questions about that, but Our volunteers are awesome. They're amazing. And the work that they do is meaningful and makes a difference in the lives of the women every day. And honestly, some of the volunteers truly make a difference in my life every day. So that's another way in which tangibly you can jump in and get involved. And we'd love to receive your support and continue to make efforts, as Bennett mentioned, in regards to awareness. That's all I got. And can I add one last thing that I want to say, that I am right now the coolest mom on the planet, because when my daughter heard I was going to be on Twitch, she went crazy. So I just want to say thank you for making me as cool as you did today.
Twitch debut.
Because she is you're on Twitch? You're going to be on Twitch? So thanks.
Yeah, we're like, stand by in case we have technical issues, please.
I did ask her to be available by text.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're welcome. It was an honor to have you. You can tell her that you're famous and you're famous on Twitch now.
Tell her too. I am.
Absolutely famous. And you're gonna be on YouTube. I'm gonna get the interview cut and saved and put up on YouTube as well. So you're gonna be double special. And
you're the coolest mom ever.
Chat says, I wish my mom was as cool as Erica.
I love it.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And we will definitely have to do this again sometime. And
yes.
we shall continue to see what we can do for you guys and how it's just gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be great. I'm just very happy that you guys are able to come hang out with me today.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing and wonderful.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Chat sends hugs and love. They say
thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening, and hugs and love back. And I'm gonna take some of that to the ladies.
Yes, give them our hugs. We had all the hugs and all the little. I have this little emote that's a little baby dragon holding a heart, and that they're spamming that. They're sending baby dragon hearts.
All right, I'm taking them back.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye.